Hello, my name's Kieran Brigden. I'm the Studio Communications Manager for the Creative Assembly based in the UK. Empire is the latest in the Total War series. It brings Total War into the 18th century. The key major sort of gameplay changes here is the move over to ranged warfare and kind of mass gunpowder usage. So you've got line infantry, artillery units, mortar units, mounted riflemen, and a variety of others going on. It's moved into the 18th century, like I say, which means that we've opened up the world so as to allow for North America, South America, Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, India, the Indies, and various other trade theatres. So as you really feel like you're expanding your empire out into the true age of global conquest, as it were. We've also this time around got the Road to Independence campaign, which is a kind of a more limited, narrative-driven story, which is based on a number of set missions with a story backing it up. It's set in 3 distinct episodes, and they are based around the US kind of story, as it were, the story of independence. So the first episode is the foundation of Jamestown, where you play as the British and the settlers there, and you're trying to protect Jamestown in its first winter and everything else. Then we move on to episode 2, which is the British with the Virginia colonists fighting against the French to try and regain control of North America. And finally, in the 3rd episode, you play as George Washington, and you're expelling the British from North America and it's setting up America as an independent nation. And that in its own way unlocks the United States into the grand campaign, allowing you to take it from there. And finally, the major gameplay addition, of course, is the addition of real-time naval combat, which is something we've not done before in the series, and we're really quite psyched to do this time around. Total War is a really cool kind of, if you're a bit of a history geek or a game geek in any way, people go, in terms of Rome, it'd be like, what would happen if we put the Persian immortals up against the Spartans and all this kind of thing, right? Just like 300. With the 18th century, it's a very similar sandbox. So what if it was the Ottomans that colonized North America before the Europeans got there? What if it was the Russians that controlled India before the Dutch, and the British? What if it was, a war between France and Britain that resulted in France colonizing the United Kingdom? What would have been the repercussions? In Total War, the great kind of counter-history argument is that we set everything up the way it is in 1700. The alliances, the technology, the factions, the world. From there on in, it's entirely up to you. No war, no peace treaty, no revolution has to occur unless you make it so, or it's forced upon you by your enemies and allies in the game. So it's a really cool kind of, almost like a top trumps thing. What would happen if I put a Russian Cossacks against, Minutemen from the United States? It's an interesting kind of what-if scenario. The way that the control system works in Empire is very similar to previous Total War games. We try and keep it very simple and accessible with kind of a narrow skill set to learn with a lot of tactical depth beyond that. So if you imagine, it's like left click to select a unit, right click to move it around, and then just left click and hold to drag the unit into formations and positions. There are some very simple UI buttons on the bottom right for special formations like square formations or diamonds. And all of that means that after about 5 minutes of play, it's very intuitive to work out the whole movement of your army and how your individual units are performing. In terms of the technology and the kind of things that we try to achieve this time around, the number of units, etc., we're aiming to get about 10,000 guys on screen at any one time, which means that you get full armies facing off against one another, across deserts and jungles and plains at different seasons and in different countries. We really want to give it that massive, epic, open feel. You really need to feel like you're sailing out to the new world and establishing yourself there, that you're fighting the first true world wars, like a skirmish in Europe, in Flanders, is fleets chasing one another off the coast of South America and fighting their battles there. Everything you do has global repercussions now, and that is a very big kind of departure for us in terms of how we're hoping to advance the series. Technologically, we had a number of challenges. To do the 10,000 musket balls and musket unit things, not only have you got those guys on screen, but they're all firing their weapons, and theoretically, you could have 10,000 musket balls flying around at any one time. We know the trajectory for all of those, the velocity, the path. It means it lets us do true line of sight, true cover systems, and a lot of other really cool stuff. There's a lot of kind of geek orgasm stuff kind of hidden in there, but what it all basically means is that from the player level, things behave the way you'd expect. So, you hit a ship in one location, it takes water in that location, starts to list and sink. unit standing behind a tree, his buddy standing to his left gets killed, he doesn't. And it adds that layer of realism to the world. It's a lot of work to get it to that stage, but it just means that you don't have to suspend your disbelief quite as much.